Good morning, Tamara Jenkins here. We're going to talk this morning about tips that you can use as you are on your journey towards becoming the most effective virtual presenter that you can. And I'm going to go ahead and throw my best three out there right now. Well, I've got your attention at the beginning because we do know we've got our audiences beginning the most at the beginning and then at the end. And I'll go ahead and say, think about your preparation for how you're going to set up your environment. Maybe not as much as your content, but with as much emphasis as your content. And then I'm going to say, go ahead and start to learn to record yourself if that's not something you do already, to use a second device or use Zoom recording, and then watch yourself back. And that's how you're going to be able to know exactly what you look like to the audience. And then you're going to be able to tweak anything that you do on a tweak. And third, I'm going to go ahead and say it's tough, but love the journey. We're on this journey towards becoming more comfortable on camera. And over time, you do get better and better with practice. So it's an experience to embrace and to certainly not be afraid of there. But in a typical presentation mode, we always do certainly share things that are great content that we develop. So I'm going to go back and forth between the PowerPoint. But did you notice what I just did as a first tip there too? I opened on full screen because you can see the difference now. If I had opened just on my slide and I was over here in the little Zoom box on the side, you lose the chance to connect with the audience compared to actually opening without showing your content originally. But we are certainly going to cover as many tips as we can here today, and let's get right into the whole setup and how we can prepare to really make sure that our audience can see us and hear us very, very well. So I'll actually come off a share, and since I've got my key points in front of you, which is another tip, to give your audience a one-page summary in Word, even if you're using PowerPoint. That way they can follow along, make notes, reference those notes either tomorrow, next week, or next month if they find those notes again. You've got a way to increase the chance that they're going to remember what it is that you show them. So we are going to talk about your computer. First of all, your computer and your sound. So I like to go ahead and elevate my computer a little bit so that it's not on the desktop where I normally would have it while I work. And that's so the camera isn't looking up at me. Again, you'll see what you look like when you record yourself back, but I prefer that. I also prefer to not use a virtual background. Many of us have different setups in our home offices, so you sort of see what you're comfortable with. Big tips though, of course, you want to be visible, so you may want a desk lamp if you're in the dark. If you do have your camera right on you, you minimize the chance of that fan that so many people have going around on the top of you, which can be very distracting. And then most importantly, you want to make sure you're not backlit. See so many presenters or participants in a call and are completely in the dark because they've got windows behind them. So go ahead and find something that works there. You could get like an easel, you could get a whiteboard, put it up on a stand, and go ahead and block out any window there. Be aware that your lighting could shift in the time of day. I do have a window, so my lighting certainly changes. I actually have an enormous amount of sun coming on at certain times of the day, so you'll want to go ahead and practice and see what you look like during the time of the day that you're going to be presenting, if it's for that once in a lifetime or that once a year presentation to senior leadership or end of semester in college or something like that. So we talk about other things that we can do in advance. Know that you could try to anticipate what you're going to look like on screen. So know your audience. Is everybody at home like we are today, or is a group of your audience going to be in a room following along? So here's when I spoke at the University of Minnesota. Before the class started here, I took some photos, and you can see how large the TVs are. In that case there, I may be actually fine staying up in the corner on Zoom and having my slide content be there, or the professor or coordinator may want to put a full headshot view on one TV and then the full content on another. So go ahead and ask another college presentation here at Virginia Tech. You can see I am minimized there up on the top of the screen, which is just fine. But to keep especially the students, they're interested, very, very good tip to go in and out of the sharing there But it does take some practice to go in and out and share screen, and you certainly want a clean desktop too. If you're going to do it, and you want it to pop up right on your presentation there. Just as I mentioned, I had hosts there when I was speaking to those colleges, so get with your host, see if they can log on early. Ask them if you can do an audio check, either maybe a desktop sharing check, just to minimize your stress on that day. And you can then breathe for those 5 minutes before the presentation starts and not have to worry about any last-minute technical difficulties, of course. You can also think about anything that you'll need for yourself during the presentation. If you're speaking for an hour, you may want some water, but if you're up on a big screen like that, you may not want an enormous water bottle. Keep in mind that anything you do on camera is going to become amplified. Any movement becomes very big on a screen like that. So a good little coffee cup to me does the job, and I like to have that handy for sure. If we talk about props, though, props can be really a great key to our success in virtual presenting, and they're not something many people use. So here I've got just a standard notebook, and you'll notice what happens if I write a number on it. Got your attention, right? So 10% is the amount of information that they say is retained by an audience member the next day. They say after a presentation, about 50% of information is retained. Going into the evening, 25% is retained, and sadly, the next day, 10%. So our job is to obviously increase the amount of information that our audience is going to remember. It's in you guys now. Hopefully you will. So a number of our tips are to increase that retention. Another way we can do that is props. So here's obviously one. When we talk about time management, maybe you guys will remember me a few years from now is the person who held up this gigantic old-fashioned clock instead of something modern. But it'll trigger your memory, won't it? I like to actually, believe it or not, use my old-fashioned clock when I'm trying to keep time. It does serve as a reminder. I also do use a countdown on my iPad, usually even more. And that way, if I've got a 10, 15-minute segment, I can go ahead and see how I'm tracking towards that very easily, and I don't have to do any math like I would with even something as simple as a wristwatch, or certainly electronic smartwatches have countdowns, have stopwatches too, but then it may not catch your attention the way a big iPad, right, in your view would. So I love my iPad for keeping track of time. If you're, let's say, sixth up in a series of presenters, the day could be running ahead, it could be running behind. So even though they give you a time slot like 9:35 to 9:50, if you start late, end early, it may be difficult for you to judge where you are in that 15, 20-minute time slot. So again, a good timer can really keep you on track. And you just click go and you go ahead and start, and that way it'll help you stay on track. Speaking of the call atmosphere, though, we do get a lot of questions about two subjects. Do you want to guess those two subjects? I got you with a question, didn't I? You woke up, didn't you? If some of you were thinking about something else, asking questions is amazing virtually, just like in person, even if you're not really looking for an answer. So we get a lot of questions about headphones. Are headphones fine in the modern world? They absolutely are, especially now. We've seen so many celebrities, so many newscasters even use headphones. In old days, or in last year, we would have always tried to use our speakerphone and not use headphones. But the variability of what's acceptable and what's professional has really expanded now, because we've seen so many people present virtually, comedians. So main thing is you just be the person you want to be, but make sure the sound quality of whatever you choose, whether that's your computer. I like to dial in separately on my iPhone because the sound quality is very good there, or headphones too. So you just want to know your audience. What are your goals for today? What sort of personality do you want to bring? Today we're having fun with this, so I'm bringing more of a casual atmosphere that's going to be different than if I'm presenting to my senior leadership, for example. And so you just got to know who you want to be for the day and then execute on that as well. If we talked about our preparation on the day of too, we want to think about when we're going to ask questions to the audience if we are. And remember, they're going to be on mute, likely, so we may have to remind them to come off of mute and actually pause and breathe and give them a chance to come off of mute. so easy to ask a question, not hear an immediate response, and then just barrel on through our presentation. So just remember to take that time, let the audience respond, or maybe you want to engage them via chat, as in we can do right now. Does anybody want to go into chat? And have you learned anything so far? Is there one tip that you'll remember more than others? Go ahead. Love to see you chat that. It's a great way to interact with your audience and also help them remember your key points too. I could say, let's tell everybody, take out a piece of paper and a pencil, write down what you've remembered and what you've learned so far today, one key point that could get you remembering and writing engaged. Or I could also, because I've given you the one-page printout, ask you to highlight anything on there that you do want to remember. So just doing everything we can to keep the audience really tracking with you, engaged, because we all know everybody's got one of these, and these things are quite distracting, and there could be people in the house and kids screaming, needing things. So anything we can do to keep that audience tracking with us does what? Increases the chance for that 10% to be a higher number, all right? We also get a lot of questions about virtual backgrounds. So I am personally not a fan because of what I've seen. So I'll just pick one here for fun, but you can see there's a halo, and then I've seen so many times where somebody's body part, like a shoulder, gets cut off, especially, and see there, my hand disappeared, right? So if you want to use them, certainly you need to keep quite still. If you move a lot, this halo can be very distracting to the audience. And then I've seen a guy's hair disappear, believe it or not, into the background there, depending on the color of the background. So I will always recommend, for a very important presentation, not to use one. If you want to use one with your friends, your peers, and that's fine. But if it's an industry conference, something where you want to be taken seriously, end of semester presentation, something like that, go ahead, and even if you're backlit, find a background, use a drape or something that works for you there, depending on your house. So here's a chance for me to practice going back into my presentation, right? So here we are, jumping around a little bit, which is fine. Know that things can go wrong when you are presenting virtually, and we're all accepting of certain things. So you just got to go with the flow, as an example of that there. So highlighting the key points, that's the same as when you present in person. You want to make sure that really those key points are going to stand out at the beginning, close with them. And I'll share a tip here. When you do watch yourself back and throughout it, you can double check. I love having just my key points written on a piece of paper. It's so old-fashioned, but that way I can have it and just eyeball throughout the presentation, make sure I'm hitting my key points. They can also serve very well. What if the power goes out and then you're stuck on the phone on Zoom? Hopefully that's, again, another reason to dial in separately into Zoom for the most important presentations. Have that backup there, that phone. I also love it. I've been presenting many times and somebody's popped into a meeting, either virtually or in person, where it's very common. A CFO, C-level, for example, will just stop in, introduce themselves, say, I'm sorry, I can't stay for the whole time. I have a board meeting coming up, but what are your key points? I've got 5 minutes. Give them to me. And that way, let's say if you have a long deck or long pages of notes, you can honestly get flustered very easily and not be able to punch your key points. So something as simple as having them right there, easy to reference, can really make you be able to deliver your best there. I'm just going to check here and talk about our next section, which is questions. So if you're in a limited time, 10 minutes, for example, one question could really throw you off, and then you may not have a great chance to cover your key points at the end or your last set of slides. So go ahead and anticipate how you're going to want to handle questions. It could be as simple as I'm going to ask you to hold all questions until the end, or go ahead and chat your questions, and I'll get back to them and answer them if I have time. Or you also may not have a choice. If that very important person does show up and ask a question, you feel like you need to respect them and answer it, then I would say go ahead and practice your presentation in advance with a more limited time frame. If you've got 15 minutes for a presentation, practice it in 12, practice it in 10, just in case the president or somebody pops in with a question and you lose that time frame there. So for others, though, it's perfectly fine, just as you would in person, to say, thanks for the question. I'll get back to you after our time together today, just so that you can really keep on track with what you want. Now, did you see what I just did there? Eye contact, right? One of the best practices there. So you'll notice that you have choices, right? If you have the list of participants and pictures up on the side, maybe it's very common for people to speak to themselves and speak to their, their 1 inch by 1 inch over there. And if they do that for a little bit, it's fine. But when the whole presentation's over there, they're really losing that chance to connect with the audience. So I do like to really keep an eye on the camera, particularly when I'm in the little screen up there. Actually, it's important any time, but you'll see this when you self-record, and then you'll be able to tweak anything that you want to about yourself. So we'll get back here to our next section, wake you up here by going back to the main set of slides. Although actually I had one more, and that was I do a lot of supply chain mapping and supply chain discussions. So you can see the difference here. If I wanted to write where certain locations were around the world for somebody I was talking to, and I could do it on screen, I could do it on whiteboard here, I could do it by drawing here in PowerPoint, but I can also do it if for example, if I have a map here, I'll often use this with push pins or stickers, and then I can also use a pre-printed map, which of course was here and not as here right now. So that's a great tip. If you're going to use a prop, make sure you have it handy. But I also would love to, in a case like that, even instead of having it on PowerPoint, just have it here on a clipboard and then go ahead and make notes in front of somebody. And that way I can keep that connection going and draw and highlight. But like I said, things go wrong virtually just as they do in person. So you just got to kind of love the journey and go with it there. But let's tee up our next section here, and that is the practice. So practice tips. How do we practice seeing what we look like virtually? Really very similar to if we're in person, and yet very few people do. So just as in person, when I do a big conference presentation, I will take a GoPro and record myself. These things can hold 30 to 60 minutes of a big presentation easily, whereas an iPhone has limited storage, although they are getting better. So I will actually set up sometimes a second Zoom login, be logged into an iPad, and that helps me check to see what I'm sharing to make sure it is going through to the audience, like you guys know. When I was sharing, it can help me keep an eye on the way things look. But I can also, believe it or not, tee up and watch the iPad with the GoPro, and then watch the GoPro footage back as a way, particularly if I'm not the host and then I don't have the ability to record myself, then it's a great way to learn, and sometimes a great way to keep memories of your best presentations too. If you are the host like I am today, I'm recording right now. I'm going to go ahead and stop recording at the end when we take questions. But certainly if you're using Zoom as the host, go ahead and record yourself. If your audience is comfortable with that, if that's right, you do need to let people know, as we did today, that you'll be recording. And certainly if you're going to use the content as we will today, you of course always need to let people know that you're recording. So even if you don't want to record the full session, you could have a friend just record a little bit for you and then text it to you later. That way you can just see even an overview of yourself and have the opportunity to tweak anything that you want to. We're all unique. We all have unique personalities, and the only thing that really matters is that you deliver the best you that you want to for that day, and that's going to change depending on how important the presentation is there too. But watch yourself back. You can check on the sound quality. You can check on how you're articulating and how the audience hears you virtually, which can be even more of a challenge if you are up in that small little box at the top and they're not seeing you like they would in person or on screen. So Certainly, it's worth its weight in gold. Athletes record themselves. Obviously, musicians do, actors. So go ahead and do that and watch yourself back. But when you do, it can be very difficult. So that's what we'll close in our last section with here. Love the journey. It's very difficult for many people to watch themselves back the first time. Your face could be switched left to right compared to what you see in the mirror. So for a lot of people, it's a shock there too. If you've grown up making selfie videos, then it's certainly not a shock. But presenting in a professional manner is very different than maybe the way you present when you're FaceTiming a friend, for example, and particularly going in on a screen sharing or speaking to notes on the screen and having yourself up there in the top. You're very different then than, again, you are if you're used to being a YouTuber or something like that. But you can catch the number of that you say. I certainly say a lot. I always catch that when I watch back. So you just got to love yourself through it, not be too hard on yourself. Make a journal, like Word docs on your computer, somewhere on paper, and just, especially if it goes weeks between your big presentations, just say, hey, for next time, I really want to remember, bring water, bring a timer, and that way you can just review those notes right before you go into your next presentation and learn from your old ones and get better over time. So I would say also find reasons to keep practicing your presentation skills. You could volunteer, you could ask in the department, another class, can I present to you on things I've learned? You could just present really on anything to a group of friends, but it just like sports and even flexibility, exercise strength, it is something that does need to be practiced over time and that you do improve over time. But the good news is you can improve quickly too. It's a lifelong journey for many of us, but you can get to where you need to with a little bit of practice and a little bit of watching yourself back there. So save those old recordings. They're certainly fun to go back and watch. And you can always then see if you did what you planned to, if you executed on your vision for the call, which right now, for me, I will just flash up one more time on screen what we covered today. Actually, I had slides to show that animation doesn't work very well on Zoom, that the timing can be off. But again, live theater, you don't know which of your tips you're gonna skip over in a long presentation too, unless you're tracking your notes very well there. But work on your setup, tweak it over time, see what works for you. It's going to be different for everybody. Certainly your execution is going to change. I wish you good luck in improving that. Enjoy that practice session, and then know your personality is going to change over time as well. So really wish you good luck. Normally we would just close on a thank you slide, right? That's very typical, and exit out of our time together right here. But I would say go ahead, just like we opened on full camera mode, go ahead and close on full camera mode. It's the one last chance to connect with your audience, one last chance for them to see you, say thank you. You can punch your final theme one more time, and I will do that right now and just say love yourself, love the journey, and if I can help in any way, please get in touch. Drop me a note. If there's best practices you have that I didn't cover today, I would love to know them. I would be honored if you'd take the time to share yours with me. And I wish you tremendous luck this year and in future years and a lot of growth ahead. Thank you.